Welcome back. We continue with bulk. Some other risks when you ship bulk cargo. One of them is vertical moist transfer. Maybe you can imagine that the cargo you see now, it's cement and it became wet. Cement in that case actually changed from its chemical form. Water was added to it. And the ship is obliged to bring the cargo in the same state as it was loaded in the loading port. It needs to be in the same state in the discharge port. So in this case, something changed the cargo in a bad way. You see the same over here, vertical moist transfer, and especially it's between the joint of two hatch covers. Most likely water has been dripping down to this column over here, and it changed the cargo. It's something to bear in mind, and it proves that you need to be spot on with your maintenance on your hatch covers and the hatch cover rubbers to prevent moisture building up in your hold by green water, and this water can change the composition of your cargo, and you are obliged to bring the cargo in such state in the discharge port as it was loaded in the loading port. Something similar is caking. Maybe you can imagine that underneath the surface where you are watching there's a HFO tank, and this contents are heated with a steam coil to a certain temperature, and we're actually baking a small cake over here. If we have caking in the hold, the cargo changes from structure, maybe even from content, and you are obliged to deliver the cargo in the discharge port in the same manner as it was loaded in the loading port. So the caking changed the cargo. You have some discoloration because of the heat, and this is not something what we want. It needs to be prevented. So in this case of caking, if there's a risk of caking, you need to speak with your chief engineer about heating the fuel tanks. So we briefly gonna speak about oars. In Dutch we say ertsen. Oars, they have a relatively small stowage factor, and it means basically the specific weight of oars is quite high. It's quite a dense cargo. Here you see a chute, conveyor belt, pouring the oars in the hold. Due to the fact that this kind of cargo have a high specific weight, it means there's a lot of stress and impact, also pouring impact on the tank top. Something to bear in mind if you make your loading plan and if you are busy with becoming seaworthy. Think about your bending moment and your shear forces, especially on this kind of ships. Tension on the hull and the hatch combing, the same reasons actually as on the tank top. You meticulously need to calculate your loading and discharge, your deballasting plan. All the steps needs to be calculated in the stability program step by step, and it's very important not to exceed the maximums of the bending moment and shear forces. Don't exceed the limits. Well, because there's a lot of cargo close to the tank top, we will not get so high with these oars. So the center of gravity of the party of oar will be very low. It means the ship will be very stiff. So the rolling period will be very short. This is bad for the crew, but it's also bad for the ship itself. The steelwork, welding connections, it's not very good sometimes, and it's a point of attention. Stiff ship. And ores can liquefy. So if there's too much water inside of the ores during the sea voyage, we start pitching and rolling. There's a vibration in the cargo from the engine. Water can come up, it can surface, and that can impose a risk to the stability of the ship. Liquefaction. It looks like this. I think we saw it earlier also. So here you see a lot of moisture among the ores, and all this water, it can rapidly take the transverse center of gravity out of the center line and create a big list at the vessel, and that's risky. Another thing to remember is the angle of repose. If we pour a bulk cargo, due to the friction of the molecules, we get a certain cone. And if we look at the angle with the horizon, the cone has a certain angle of repose, and that has something to do with the friction among the molecules of the bulk cargo. The definition is over here, the angle with the horizon if the cargo is freely poured. I hope you can imagine that if we make a sea voyage with all these cones in the cargo holds, it imposes a risk of collapse of these cones. If the cones collapse, also the transverse center of gravity of the ship drastically changes, and probably in a bad manner. So this transverse center of gravity will get out of the center line, and then the ship gets a list, and that can be highly dangerous. So ores, now we know about angle of repose and pouring cones. If we know that up front, the lawmaker says this is not allowed. You are not allowed to sail with these kind of cones in your cargo hold. There's an obligation to trim the vessel. This is not allowed, but you should make it horizontally flush. I will show you a movie in a second. And if this is compulsory, yes or no, you can find it in the EMSPC code, and it depends on the steepness of this angle of repose. We're going to speak later about it in the ordinary lesson. That's it for now. Thanks for watching. Please continue with the next movie.